Which film would be better from perspective of another character? Passgangers 2016. Pav of Aurora instead of Jim's. The Karate Kid from Mr. Miyagi's perspective. It's not fully explained until part 2 or 3, but Miyagi's life is way more interesting than Daniel's. He's born in Okinawa. As a young man, he falls in love with his brother's fiancée. The fiancée loves him too, so they elope. This causes such a scandal that they have to flee to America. Miyagi and his wife embrace their new country and start a family. Then World War II breaks out. Miyagi enlists, or possibly is drafted, not sure, and sent to fight in the Pacific against his former homeland. He fights bravely and wins a Medal of Honor. Whilst fighting overseas, his wife and child are taken to a Japanese internment camp in the US. They die. Miyagi returns, finds out that the country he risked his life for killed his family. He somehow gets through this and develops a zen-like sense of inner peace anyway. Then runs an auto shop for the next 40 years, until some whiny dweeb shows up and begs to learn karate. Any Godzilla movie from the perspective of Godzilla. If I can watch a cartoon about a robot that can't speak, I can watch my favorite movie character carry his own movie. This basically why Cobra Kai exists. The Devil Wears Prada as Meryl Streep's character. I always imagined it be a cool Godfather-type movie with her rising through the ranks of the magazine industry, leaving the remains of her fashion enemies in her wake. The Truman Show 100% from Truman's perspective. Monsters Inc. from Mr. Waternoose's perspective. It would be interesting to see the lengths he went to prop up the company until he finally decided on kidnapping children. Heathers, if it was presented from Heather McNamara's perspective. She was the kinder of all the three and in the end she mellows out the whole queen bee attitude. It would have been interesting to see what she really thought about the other two Heathers, how she got with them, etc. I've always wondered what a Back to the Future from Doc's perspective would be like. I think it would be kind of interesting. Edit. Apparently I have been given an award. Very cool. Fight Club from Marla's perspective. She meets this weirdo pushover at all her meetings and thinks he's kinda pathetic. Then he's suddenly a badass and goes by a different name and piques her interest, and she slowly realizes what's wrong with him but just plays along until he finally loses his shit and the two become one. Keep the two male roles to represent how much more attractive one persona is over the other. Marla's pretty ducked in the head, too, so it makes sense she'd let crazy stick its pendies in her. What's eating Gilbert Grape from the mom's perspective. Jaws from the shark's perspective. These guys trying to kill you just because you want to eat. Titanic from Propeller Guy's perspective. We get to know his whole story. Get attached to him. Watch him as he goes on his own journey of self-discovery at sea on the greatest ship the world has ever known. And then, bonk. Credits. Star Wars EP2 from Dooku's perspective. The Lion King, but from Scar's Pav. Harry Potter would be interesting if it was told in the perspective of Draco Malfoy. American Pie from Nadia's perspective. European chick comes to America and has her own awkward sexual discovery only to find out she's been used and blasted all over the internet. Any Batman movie from Alfred's perspective. Rear Window from Raymond Burr's perspective. He's killed someone in his apartment, and he has to get rid of the body and the evidence while a nosy neighbor watches his every move. Okay, so, hear me out, Serenity, and the Firefly franchise as a whole, but told from the perspective of River. The whole, unreliable narrator, angle that throws to the series, getting to know the Alliance from the perspective of someone who was abused and tortured by them. I think that'd make a hell of a good watch. I also want to know more about Shepard. Who is this badass man of the cloth? Who is this man who is extremely proficient at so many things which, traditionally, ecclesiasts do not train in, Flag of Our Fathers did this. They first showed the Battle of Iwo Jima from the US perspective, and then after they showed it from the Japanese perspective in Letters from Iwo Jima. Not a film, but I always wanted a Scrubs show from the perspective of Dr. Cox. That show seemed to be another trope where they follow a side character with the main character in the background. Example, what it actually shows, a quirky show with funny repeating tropes. What I saw the show was about Dr. Cox's journey from closed-off asshole to caring father figure. LOTR from Soren's eye perspective. Harry Potter. From Hermione's perspective. It would also make it a fresh experience for the book readers. PETA from Hunger Games. We'd get to see what went on at the Capitol when they took him and brainwashed him. Avatar: The Last Airbender from Uncle Iroh's perspective, with his backstory, involvement in the war as a youth, and leading into what he becomes in the original series. If the Sherlock Holmes movies, any of them were from John Watson's perspective, that would be interesting. Pirates of the Caribbean. Dead Men Tell No Tales would have been much better told from Karina's perspective than Henry's. She's a much more interesting character and her story is more compelling because she doesn't know who he father is. If Henry were any more vanilla, he'd have his insides scraped out to flavor ice cream. If Forrest Gump was told from Jenny's perspective, I think it could be a real interesting movie and would give a much better understanding of her character. I feel like she's a misunderstood character. The Exorcist, from the perspective of the girl, trapped inside her body. I'd love to see a Friday the 13th from Jason's POV. We all know his backstory, but I'd like to know if he ever feels justified in killing people that were indirectly responsible for his mom's death. How he felt being picked on by the camp counselors and campers when he was a kid over things that he didn't have control over. Did he actually enjoy killing people, or if it was something that he felt just needed to be done? I have so many questions. Edit. I just found out that there are at least 2 fan-made movies that may explore his backstory a little more. Never Hike in the Snow and Never Hike Alone are the titles. James from Dead Meat Podcast did a kill count on one of the movies, so maybe that's something to check out. The Star Wars prequels from Shmi's perspective. A slave is suddenly pregnant. Her son gets won in a bet and taken away. She gets released and married. Then kidnapped and watches the men, and the women and the children too, that took her get slaughtered by her son just before she dies. The Revenant, from the point of view of John Fitzgerald. Tom Hardy did such a stellar job in that movie. To Kill a Mockingbird from Boo Radley's perspective. Skinny Pete El Camino, underrated character, strong development and linked to Jess's past and future. Would have loved to see more of his side. Peter Pan as Tink. Castaway from Wilson's perspective. Almost Famous with Penny Lane. Mewtwo Strikes Back from Mewtwo's perspective. You're a recently born Pokémon with unmatched strength. You want to know who you are and where you came from. Your friends died because humans suck. A powerful mafia boss encases you in a suit of armor to help you control your power, but you realize he just wants to use you as a tool. You break free and escape to an island. You know you're strong, but you want to test yourself. You invite the strongest trainers in the world to face off against you. When they come, you clone their Pokémon and build yourself an army. You'll need new friends to help keep you company, and you'll protect them. Your counterpart, from where you were cloned, and a foolishly stubborn boy lead the opposing army. You go toe-to-toe with your original form. The clones face off against their original forms. The foolish boy jumps in the center of your attack, sacrificing himself as he calls out for peace. You and Mew realize that fighting is pointless. You and the clones resolve to find shelter and a better life. You erase the memories of the troublesome humans so they leave you and your new friends in peace. Waterworld, from the perspective of that old guy with big glasses in the oil tanker who calls out how many feet of black stuff they have left. I feel like the Winter Soldier would be interesting from Bucky's perspective. Predator, from the Predator's point of view. It starts out as the Predator watching a group of soldiers mercilessly slaughter a whole compound, so you decide to pick them off one by one in creative and ironic ways. Hiding in the jungle, watching them wander in fear of you. Until one of the soldiers escapes, but when you finally track him down he puts up a good fight, so you challenge him to a fist fight, but through some bullshit traps he placed earlier, you're mortally wounded. So you decide to end it all and take him down with you. Say 7N from John Doe's perspective. Not film but series. Phineas and Ferb from Doofenshmirtz's perspective. Passgangers. Things would have been way more interesting and mysterious to start from Jennifer Lawrence's character's perspective. Then Chris Pratt's character perspective could be used as backstory.